Becca, you're going to tell us about this. Get in the shade a little more.
Start at the beginning. This is Nicaragua's first peoples up there. And Nicaragua's indigenous people were descended from the Aztecs, so they spoke Nahuatl. Come along here, and we have the next stage. So of course we have the Spaniards discovering Nicaragua. The Spaniards didn't come into Nicaragua right away. Their ships couldn't land because of the mangrove swamp, so they came to Nicaragua. They kind of threw a flag at it and then came and entered it from the north and the south. And in the first 35 years of Spanish rule, 2 million indigenous people as a population went down to 8,000. So that was through, by of course killing people, disease, but also slavery. In Leon, people were sent out of the country in droves, and there's records of all those people who were sent to the silver mines in Peru. Again, this is the Somoza era idea of history, so you can see the indigenous people kind of supplicating themselves to the Spaniards in a way that perhaps didn't really happen, since we have some pretty big indigenous heroes as well in Nicaragua. And then of course they always talk about the Spaniards came with the sword and the cross, right? So this is the sword part. Where they're fighting the indigenous people, and this is indigenous resistance. We had a lot of indigenous resistance, including the indigenous women who for a time refused to have sex with their partners so that they wouldn't create more slaves for the Spaniards. And when the Spaniards found out what was happening, they invited all the chieftains to come to a dinner to talk about this issue that the women were giving them, and they set the dogs on them and had the dogs kill them and eat them alive.
Who set the dogs on them?
The Spaniards set the dogs on the Spanish governor. Pedro Davila.
I have a bad record in Nicaragua about showing up to be.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The cross.
So this is the cross part. So this is of course the Catholic Church coming to Nicaragua, and as we see in recent history, the Catholic Church continues to be a weapon of empire here in Nicaragua. This is one of our first female heroes in Nicaragua. This is Rafaela Herrera. She was a Spanish woman who was here with her father, who was part of the Spanish military, and he was the head of the fort at El Castillo along the Rio San Juan, which is between what is now Nicaragua and Costa Rica. And some British pirates came up the river and tried to take the fort. And her father had died of a fever recently, and there was like no leader at this fort, and all the men were cowering, and she fired them up and got them to fire the cannons. They got a boat and put a bunch of sails on the boat and lit the sails on fire and sent it at the British boats, and they triumphed, and they kept Nicaragua from being taken by the British. And later she had, that was on the Rio San Juan, which is about halfway down the river. And she actually had 5 children, got married, was widowed, and she was living in Granada, homeless with 5 children. And finally, the King of Spain gave her a recognition for her help and gave her a little piece of land.
Well, okay.
What's her name?
For working against
Rafaela
the
Herrera.
Oh, Rafaela Herrera.
This is the independence of Nicaragua. So Central America became independent from Spain, and then about 10 minutes later, the country split up and Nicaragua gained its independence. So this is Nicaragua's independence. This is, of course, my favorite one. This is Andres Castro with the rock. So in 1856, the U.S. Civil War was brewing, and one of the ways to support the South was to try to get Central America as part of the South. So the gray-eyed man of destiny, William Walker, came down to Nicaragua with his mercenary army and declared himself president of Nicaragua, and English as the language, the official language, and declared slavery legal in Nicaragua. And that is the one thing that got the two factions in Nicaragua, the conservatives and the liberales, who were fighting against each other, to join together to get this guy out.
We have the link. We can actually watch that.
Walker.
Walker. We can actually watch it on TV when we get home at some point. And I don't know how you did make it go onto the television, but I'm sure
there's ways to do that.
Oh,
There are ways to do that. Yeah.
The liberals and the conservatives would actually go to war.
Oh, they were at war against each other, and William Walker brought them together.
Camilo's mother worked on that.
they fought against the U.S. invaders and the mercenary army, and what they did was they were called the filibusters. The U.S. mercenaries were called the filibusters. So at a ranch out here, not too far from Managua, they had the Battle of San Jacinto, which is where the Nicaraguan army was fighting against these filibusters. And the guy with no shirt on is a young sergeant by the name of Andres Castro. And I'm not sure why he never has a shirt on. I guess his uniform wasn't very good. He's always depicted with these really great abs.
And he's in there.
And you see him everywhere. Where you go in any office and you see Ruben Dario, you see Sandino, and you see Andres Castro. He's our David, because he picked up a rock. They were using these old guns that you would jam, right? And so the filibusters had these newfangled guns that were working just fine, and the Nicaraguans' guns were jamming. And his gun jammed, and he threw it down, and he picked up a rock, and he threw it at a filibuster, hit him in the head, and killed him.
Ooh.
And so that is our David, and he is brought up as our, he's our David who fought Goliath and won. And so he is everywhere. And when you drive past that we'll go on our way to Matagalpa, you drive past where that ranch is, there's a statue of him. And they always say, like, watch out, because if you're gringo, like, duck, because he's got a rock for you.
The other thing I noticed, I don't know if anybody saw it, there was a small inscription on the other side on the bottom, and it said the lion has a different story of the history than the hunter.
Ah.
Very good, very good. And this is, I believe, I can't remember this part. Colleen, help me out. You know what this is? It must be around
Getting rid of Walker, no?
Maybe it's getting rid of Walker.
Yeah.
Maybe it's getting rid of Walker. And then the last one over here is, the Somoza era dream of Nicaragua's future, which has big tobacco plants and coffee plants and machinery, very modern machinery, ships and oil rigging and all the rest of modern traffic. So that is the history of Nicaragua.
That might be getting rid of the U.S. Army.
You think the most was over here? No. Was it Senegal? No, I think it's too early. They look like Civil War era kind of things.